Welcome back to The Truth in This Art. Thank you for joining me for my conversations bridging arts, culture, and community. I am your host, Rob Lee. And if you enjoy this content, please subscribe to our newsletter at thetruthinhisart.com. Today, I have a special guest for a special conversation, and I am privileged to be joined by an award-winning artist, activist, and educator, as well as the founder of a New York City-based dance theater collective that works in communities to organize for gender and racial justice through experimental dance performance. Please welcome Sydnie L. Mosley. Welcome to the podcast.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. And as I am one to do, especially in probably the last 20 or so episodes, I always remind people that you have your four eyes on. Thank you for wearing your glasses. Appreciate you. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. I've been part of the Four Eyes Club since I was 7 years old. So I feel you.
Look, I'm working on that Warby Parker promo. It's like, yo, let me get those. But as we start, I want to dive in and sort of do that level set. And, before we get into the deeper questions, I want to give you the space and opportunity to introduce yourself and your work with SLM Dances. Because I think it's a lot of strength and power in folks saying who they are in their words. We get those online bios. Sometimes it's like, all right, that's a chat GPT one that came from another source, but getting it directly from the person, it matters a lot. So if you will, could you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your work?
Yeah, absolutely. I am Sydnie Mosley. As you said, I am a dance artist and a writer. I'm also an educator, an activist, an advocate. I also like to remind people that I am a friend, a sister, a daughter, a cousin, a niece, an auntie, and I bring all of that with me wherever I am. And I am born and bred in Baltimore, Maryland, yes, exactly. But I've been here in New York City for about 21 years now, and I have made my home base in Harlem. And I would say, in terms of my work, I'm the founding artistic executive director of SLM Dances, and you shared our mission so beautifully. And it's a lot of words. And I would say, if I were to um, put it in the simplest terms, we work with communities that we are a part of or have been invited into to creatively problem solve through movement and art. That is really the basis of the work that we do.
See, I like that. That sounds real crisp. It's a lot better than what I was fumbling through. It's done well, but also getting that extra flavor and flair. That sounds really good. And, the problem solving piece and kind of address, it's great. And one of the things I'd like to know is one of those for you it sticks out, but indelible moments of creativity, that you kind of look back at and maybe that's the start of that's something that left like a profound impact on you. What comes to mind for you?
Yeah, it's a lot of things. I grew up in an artistic household. My mom is a singer. My dad is or was in his young man days a DJ. And I have early memories of listening to him on his radio show on Towson University Radio when I was like a little baby, while me and my mom were like cleaning the house, right? And my mom singing and playing the piano. So creativity runs in the family. For me, I would say kind of an earliest memory of me sharing my art was, when I was 7 years old. That's actually when I choreographed my very first dance. And I did that through a school program. I went to Bethel Christian School, which was the school attached to Bethel AME Church. And the dance that I choreographed was to a Langston Hughes poem. And so I would say that one of the distinguishing factors of my work is that movement and words have equal importance for me. And that started literally from the very beginning, from the very first dance that I ever choreographed.
Thank you. And extra points because you answered one of my later questions there, making my job, making it seem like I know what I'm doing here. So appreciate you there.
Happy to help. I'm happy to help.
It's like, look, I got to reduce my word count on here to make it about the guest. So I'm like, I'll do one of those pauses and just let you keep cooking. And thank you for that. One of the things I read on your website, I thought was really, really cool, and I would like for you to expand on that, if you will. Your website, I read this desire to help feel human through dance. Can you expand on like what this means and like how you aim to achieve this through your work, through your efforts?
Yeah. I mean, the theater to me is one of the most fertile places to connect with people, to shift hearts and minds, as well as just being in a physical movement practice. It brings up a level of vulnerability. It reminds us of our humanity. And when we are witnessing dance and theater, we have really visceral responses to seeing it, like actually in our bodies. There are studies that show that our breath and our heartbeats literally sync up as audience members experiencing live performance. So, all of that to me is what it means to feel human through dance. It's literally just reminding us of our humanity. And when we're reminded of that humanity, it also primes us for dialogue. It primes us for action. It primes us for connection. And that is really what is important to me and how dance feels useful to me. I have a great collaborator also from Baltimore. Her name is Allegra Romita, and she has nicknamed me Sydnie Dances for the People Mosley because a signature aspect of my performance works is audience engagement. I call audience members witness participants because I cultivate an activation in the performance space with audience members. And all of that is about reminding us of our humanity, reminding us that, we all have breath in our lungs and heartbeats inside of our rib cages, right? And that connection allows us to care for one another with a deeper sense of purpose.
That's great. And I like when we get these sort of like extra like names and titles. Like, let me append to this. Let me add. This is actually what it is. Um, and it's like I can almost see it now. Like you have dances, right? And there, it's just like I can see it almost like Rob talks, maybe too much, maybe poorly, maybe he has a great voice. I don't know. It's all of the different things, but I just want to hear. I might put that out there as a poll. What do people think? Um, so talk about a bit about sort of the formation, the founding of SLM dances and like how that came about. Because I find like, when I think of this, especially the timing, right? We're in the second half of the year and we're in an election year. And one of the motivators behind this podcast was I got tired of people talking wild, specifically former presidents talking wild about Baltimore. So I wanted to use storytelling as a mechanism to disprove it, right? It was sort of a desire, a need, and a feeling of like lack, like who's having real conversations with people in Baltimore and now abroad, but people in Baltimore that kind of look like me or have sort of interesting work that might fall in different shades of creativity and artistry and that community and culture stuff. So talk a bit about that when it comes to sort of building out and founding like your work and where you're at.
So SLM Dances was founded in 2010. And I actually always knew, and by always knew, I mean since I was a teenager, that I wanted to be a dancer and a choreographer, and more specifically, that I wanted to have my own dance company. So, as I said, I'm born and raised in Baltimore. I grew up dancing. I started dancing when I was 4 years old at Flair Dance Studios. And my primary dance teacher, her name is Ava Fields. And I was a part of the Ava Fields Dance Ministry. It's a liturgical dance troupe. And through that, experience, and I danced in school, I went to summer, like my experience is vast, but being kind of based in that spiritual community as well as like community-based community, it really taught me that dance was useful. Right? It's useful to praise God. It's useful to celebrate. It's useful to mourn. It's useful to inspire joy. And in the programs that I participated in, everybody could dance, right? Like everybody could participate. There wasn't, the hierarchy placed on bodies in the way that happens when you go to a conservatory program, right? And that was really foundational in terms of me forming SLM dances much later. I went to school for dance, I went to Barnard College, and then I got my MFA. And after I came out of grad school, I basically came into New York City and hit the ground running in terms of founding this company. And I wanted to share my choreography with the world, but it wasn't until I started working on a project called the Window Sex Project, which was an initiative where I wanted to respond to gender-based sexual harassment that was happening in public spaces. You might hear it sometimes referred to as street harassment or catcalling, things like that. It wasn't until that particular project came about that I really kind of focused in on the type of work that I wanted to make. It really made clear for me that I wanted to work with women and femmes in my company. Those are the artists I wanted to work with. It made clear for me that I wanted to use dance, right? Like dance was useful, and I wanted to use it to address social issues that mattered to me and to the communities that I loved. And it also kind of solidified the type of work that I wanted to make, which was not just like a 5, 6, 7, 8, but it also was theater just as much as it was dance. It was performance art just as much as it was dance. And it was also public art, right? Like that the people in the communities who were impacted were also in some ways contributing to what was being shared.
Thank you. So when you're in, and this is broad because I think it keys in multiple areas, whether it be from sort of the choreography point for as far as the collaboration point, as far as, sort of maybe even the writing component, right? Could you speak on sort of the principles and themes that shape the creative process? And I always do these comparisons, but when I think about what I'm doing, there's some people do mind mapping, right? I sit there and like, who I want to talk to, who can I get? And sort of when is it a good time to do this? How many episodes? Things of that nature is multiple considerations that go into ultimately the end result. And just as simple as you and I having this conversation now, we were going to have this a couple months ago, and now we're able to have this now. So as I'm thinking and listening to the conversation, I'm processing like, all right, where does this fit? Where is this going to fit? And what's a good time to put this out? So speak a bit about that when it comes to sort of like your work, sort of the guiding principles and the themes that show up.
Yeah, I mean, we really operate from a values-based place in terms of the work that we create. So, our guiding principles are, community. It is activism. It's learning because we're always in a space of continuing to learn about what we're doing. It is dreaming because I'm dreaming of a more just world. It is also about our humanity, and it is also about being transparent. So those values are really guiding everything that we do. And then I would say each of the creative works that we've developed are focused on a particular theme, right? So I told you about this one project that's about gender-based sexual harassment. We have another project called Body Business that is about economic justice for artists. Our most recent work, Purple, is really about multi-generational connection. It is about deep sisterhood, and it is about kind of imagining the world that we want to see, that we want to be in.
And that is good. I actually I will go into that question right now because it's almost like you're guiding me a little bit here. Um, so, sisterhood and sort of social change, storytelling, movement. Talk a bit about the like that moment when you're like, we should do this. This fits like, was there something that was like you can point at it or like you pulled out the notepad or the app and put down like we should do. I'm gonna call it purple, right? But now, talk about that, like that ideation, that initial step. Because I can't dance. Two, on I can't dance well. Let me rephrase. I'll talk to a dancer and a choreographer and say I can't dance, but I don't know anything about it. So I want to kind of get through those steps, if you will.
Yeah, for purple in particular, the origin story, if you will, is that several years ago, actually about 10 years ago, I was spending a lot of time with one of my play sisters, one of my little sisters, Simone, and she and I were doing a lot of like art dates, art and culture dates. So we were going to talks, lectures, museums, and we saw things like there's an artist, Wengechi Mutu, who had an exhibition at the Brooklyn Museum. We went to a conversation between Bell Hooks and Melissa Harris Perry, like, all of these really interesting events. And the common theme in all of them is that those events were either created by Black women or drew together a large audience of Black women. And we started to realize that there was a certain energy in the room when we would arrive at these events. And that energy we started to call purple, pulling that from Alice Walker's The Color Purple, which is about this sisterhood and this magic that happens between Black women. And so then kind of the next layer was realizing that what I was cultivating in terms of a community inside of SLM dances was also purple. And I wanted to create a choreographic piece, an artistic piece that kind of captured and encapsulated that vibe, that feeling, that energy that is purple.
Thank you. Thank you. I like hearing the origin story. I like getting that and seeing those connections. And, it's like when I think of the color purple, literally the color purple, not the title. That sounds weird. I think of sort of royalty. I think of power. I think of love. I think of a lot of different things. I think of connection. Frankly, I think of Prince. I think of Baltimore Ravens. And before I forget, I just added a new question because I'd be adding. Um, you were touching on like sort of the sort of arts and culture dates and being out there and what I'm feeling and what I'm hearing in sort of that pursuit because I relate to it is the importance of constantly learning. And I think, especially social media and sort of what we've encountered for probably the last 20 to 25 years, more recently of churning out stuff, putting out stuff, but not really taking a breath, not really being able to have experiences to refill that vessel of creativity and just learning and just, I do a movie podcast on occasion, and sometimes I'm thinking, am I watching this movie for fun or am I watching it for research? So, with that in consideration, that sort of example, could you speak on the importance of constantly learning, of having those moments where you're able to do those sorts of arts and culture dates?
Absolutely. It is absolutely essential to my practice. I actually want to kind of pull apart two things that I'm hearing in your question, because one is what is the practice around rest and restoration and refilling the cup? And then what is the practice of um taking in the world around you, and how does that inspire and impact what you're making? And I would say that both of those things are extremely crucial to my practice. And when I have built out literally my business plan, I built in a moment for rest. Right. So there is a creative research and development time. There is a solidifying, and now we're going to produce the big show time. And then there's the rest and reflection time. And that is the cycle that I'm in, that the moment of the cycle that I'm in right now after having produced and toured Purple. So that is necessary, A, because I'm literally so exhausted from the work that it takes to produce such a large performance work, such a large theatrical work, and also because I don't have any new ideas right now, and I'm okay with that, and like that's what it's supposed to be, and continuing to read, continuing to go to museums, continuing to talk to people, all of that stuff is what inspires those new ideas. And that's a part of the process.
That's super important in having it. Like, I talk with folks about sort of the distinguishing between what's like sort of content, and I get real icky when I call sort of something that has an artistic inclination. Like, this is always classed as content. I think it's anthropology. I think it's journalism. You know what I mean? And that's the intent there. It's not just, hey, tell me something that I can think that's gonna go viral. Like, no, I don't want that. I want to get to sort of the root of it. And even the folks that I talk to, it's not like, all right, so who's trending right now? Sometimes there is that sort of overlap, but really it's having a conversation and getting insights from folks. That's sort of where the value is at. And when I'm thinking through, when I have those periods of being exhausted and having folks tell me, like, you need to take a break, I bake that in now. I bake those periods in. Or traveling. That's another thing I try to like add to it. Because, if you're in the same spot, right? And I'll share this with you. I was very close to visiting Harlem back a couple months ago, right? And I went up there and I was in this sort of spot where I was feeling like just kind of down, the waxing and waning of it. It's like, is this good? Does this matter? And I saw a few of my friends up there in NY, and I was able to just chit chat with them and just explore, see things through their lens and go to places that I wouldn't go to. I was hanging out with like, a bit of the trans community. I was hanging out with some of the artist community. I was like, yo, I'm outside a lot right now. And I felt fulfilled. I felt like I wasn't even looking for any of that stuff. And I felt like I got more than I was like bargaining for. And I know the interviews after that and that week or two after, I had that newfound energy that was showing up in that stuff, maybe even referencing that. I got questions that came out of just those experiences that maybe changed the way I was looking at things. So I definitely agree it's so important.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things you just said that really resonate for me. So this idea of, when you're saying like the anthropology of it, right? And there are three artists who I want to name whose legacy I feel like I am working in: Catherine Dunham, Pearl Primus, and Zora Neale Hurston. And all three of them were anthropologists. All three of them were ethnographers. And it was foundational to their work to go and be with the people. You
100%.
got to be with the people. And out of being with the people, that is where they crystallize a lot of their artistic ideas. That's where they were able to crystallize a lot of the things that they were able to share with a broader public about Black folks that shaped what our understanding of Black culture in a more true and accurate way, and Black culture across the diaspora, not just here in the States. And then the other thing that you're saying that I really vibe with is that's how I like to travel, right? Like I like to travel with people who are from the place.
Yeah.
I want to be with you. Don't take me to what's new and hot. Take me to the spot that is, a hole in the wall, but they got the best, whatever the local food is ever. Like one of my best friends is Trini. And the first time that I ever went to Trinidad, I was there with her and she was like, doubles. We got to get the doubles. And she had me up at 3 o'clock in the morning okay, to go to the spot for the best doubles in all of Trinidad, according to her. And I'm going to just, if she says so, I'm going to believe it, right? I'm going to believe it. But I was like, girl, only you would have me up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go eat some food, okay?
But yeah, you know
But
what?
that experience, is one I'll never forget. The food was bomb. I'm not going to play. And, that is the experience I want to have. I don't want to go when it's just time for all of the tourist things.
Same. It's two things. And I definitely want to get your take. I'm going off script at this point. But when, when I go to a new place, I traveled a little bit this summer, and I'm looking for sort of something that gets that Rob stamp for approval. It's like I know it when I see it. I just need to know a few different things, and letting sort of my taste dictate it, and generally trusting in that, and having folks that I know who don't really have maybe that, or able to find that. It's like a sort of sweet moment when, I had a relative ask me, yo, you're a culture guy, right? So I'm going to this city. What do you recommend? And I'm like, I don't live there, nor have I been there. And he's like, yeah, but so what's the place to go to? That's how it kind of flows now. And I value that, for one. And it's like, yo, you trust me that I'm not going to waste your time, your effort, and it's going to be a place that's kind of cool and off the beaten path.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we develop our taste, right? And we might not, maybe I've never been there, but you kind of know what to look for to find the things, right? And so I think cultivating our taste, and I think that's the other thing that continuing to engage and to consume different types of art and culture allows you to do, is to develop your taste, to develop what you like and don't like, to develop what you think is good work and is not good work. And when you do that, then you can be more specific about having the types of cultural experiences, whether that's, the best doubles in Trinidad or not, like that is how you sharpen your ability to find those places and do those things.
Totally. So I got a couple more questions I want to key in on, and one is, and we all know if we're doing it right. Of like, I usually ask photographers this. I'll ask now I guess I ask podcasters this. When I guess the same thing applies for sort of any person that's an artist, any person that's a creative. How do you separate sort of good work from okay work, from like, all right, let's go back to the drawing board. Maybe we need to scrap this, because every now and again, because you have folks that we run into the confidence thing, especially when it comes to the whole social media thing. Like, damn, this only got 2 clicks. It's only got 2 likes. And sometimes we fall into that, and we think that the work's not necessarily good. I have a feeling that when I've done an interview, I almost say it to the guests. You can like talk to guests that I've talked to. It's like, yeah, I think we got it. I literally say I can't help it. So how do you distinguish sort of those tiers? And maybe you don't, but how do you distinguish sort of like maybe the feeling of, doing a specific work, working on a project, doing some choreography, like the sort of feeling and the distinguishing between what's something that's good, what's something that maybe needs to be retooled, things of the sort.
I think a lot about intent versus impact. And I believe really strongly that we have to measure an artist's work by their own work and their own goals, right? So, is this meeting the intention and the goal that I set out for it? And the way that I do that in my own choreography is I have open work in progress showings. I invite mentors into the rehearsal process whose opinions I trust. There are different moments throughout the process where I'm opening the doors to measure if I'm doing, or really if the work is doing what I said I wanted the work to do. And doing that over a long period of time, workshopping it in that way has yielded great results, for me, because by the time I'm going into production and where lights, cameras, costumes, I want to know that the work is solid. I want to know without a question that it is offering the impact that I want it to. And I'll also just add that that's really important to me because oftentimes the impact I wanted to have is around achieving some goal around social justice, achieving some goal around community connection. And so I need to be clear that that's what I'm actually doing with the work and not just paying it lip service.
I love that. And, definitely that's what I think here, in doing this. What is the intent? Like what am I aiming for? Am I reaching at? Am I falling short of the mark? Because, I've been podcasting 10 years before I even started this one. I was just doing goofy podcasts about pop culture and stuff that I enjoy doing. But this one is more aligned to sort of mission and doing something that I hold a little bit closer to me that I think matters sort of in a different way. It's not purely a creative pursuit. I won't call it, activism because that's not really where I think I'm positioned, but that's it's part of that intent and trying to, at the end of the day, it's something good. It's sort of that. And that's what I always kind of drive at in any effort that I'm putting out there. Also to make me seem like I'm smarter than I am, when I talk to you creative types. I'll just reference, someone was talking to Sydnie Mosley, right? And she said this, I agree with it. And it's like you don't know what she's talking about. Just gassing myself up a little bit. Um, so I'm gonna move to this next question. As far as being named one of Dance Magazine's 25 to watch this year, 2024. That's a big honor, right? So how does this recognition, getting that sort of like acknowledgement from the industry, acknowledgement from peers, speak on that and how like it's gonna, lead to maybe more opportunities and exposure or even influences on future projects.
Yeah, it is absolutely a wonderful recognition from my peers in the field. And my hope is that the visibility will lead to sustainability. It is no secret that arts and culture is from an economic standpoint is a difficult field to financially sustain in. And I would say like dance is at the top of the list of all of the mediums that has a hard time. And historically, this is true. But now I think it is even more true, especially in a, post 2020 moment where and a post 2020 very specifically Black Lives Matter moment where there were tons of resources poured into Black and Indigenous and other people of color's artistic and cultural pursuits, and now that money has dried up, that well has run dry. And for me, I am very clear that I'm trying to do the impossible, which is to sustain a professional touring dance company. And for me, I'm hoping that this kind of visibility just lets more people know about our work, know what we have to offer. In addition to the creative works that we do, we also offer a host of workshops and programs that center the wisdom of Black women, that promote wellness, that move anti-racist dialogues into practice. And so I am very interested in connecting with more organizations, businesses, institutions that value our knowledge around that and our embodied practice about that. We will come and do a staff retreat with your team. We will come and do leadership development with your team, like all of those things. In addition to, we have these incredible performance works and we want to share them nationally and internationally. And we are always looking for partners and collaborators to bring us to do that work.
Great. It's great. So we have sort of, you know, the trajectory in a very, it's not the exhaustive, but we have the trajectory, right? So I want to get the sort of the feedback, the advice portion as we wrap up in this sort of last real question. And I have a few rapid fire questions for you. Those are coming for you as well. But in this sort of like last real question, you know, present, looking ahead, what advice would you, impart? And, you've touched on sort of like, intent. That's a really good gem right there. But what advice would you, share with aspiring dancers, choreographers, folks that want to have that traveling, sort of dance production theater like company, and even with the added details of sort of where it fits when it comes to the funding, where it fits when it comes to where we're at culturally in this 2024 moment.
Yeah. I have a few thoughts about this. I think number one, I would advise young artists to take your time. It's a marathon, not a sprint. A lot of artists will come to New York and they're like, if I don't make it in 2 years, then I'm going home. Well, baby, go on home. Go ahead. Are you in this or are you not? Right. And playing the long game has served me well.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is to learn how to take care of yourself and then put that in your calendar and then build your career around that. Because if you don't have your health, if you don't have your well being, if you don't have your mental health, you will also not make it through a very challenging career and a very challenging field. The other, I would say, big thing, especially for young artists who, have lots of ideas, but maybe they don't know where to start or they're afraid to start or, just start. Just do something. If you have an idea, you will fumble your way through it. But if you don't ever start doing it, you won't ever know how to do it. So you just got to start. And my last little bit of advice is like batten down the hatches because the economics of this thing are going to get worse before they get better. You mentioned earlier, we're in this presidential cycle year. We have no idea what is about to happen over the next few months. And arts funding is on the chopping block today, So, really just thinking long term, thinking about how you can take care of yourself. And then also, how can you use that time to germinate new ideas, to really dive deeper into developing your artistic voice and your artistic practice? So when you have the resources to produce your work, that you're ready to do that.
Solid. So great. And, it almost selfishly, when I get the advice from folks, is like part of it I know, but part of it just rehearing it, it just kind of gives it to me as well as the listener. So thank you for that. And now I'm trying to get weird. Trying to get to the rapid fire portion of the pod.
Not weird.
All right,
Oh
coming in.
gosh.
All right, so I got a few, and I never give these to people because I like to see the look on your like that's I eat that, when folks are like, yo, I take that to the face. So I'm gonna try to work that in all episode. So I got a couple of them for you. I got three rapid fire questions for you. And as I always tell folks, don't overthink these. It's just like, look, I said what I said. All right, here's the first one. How much time, and this really relates back to one of the things mentioned earlier as far as the dates go, but how many like hours on average do you think that you spend towards consuming art? Whether it be like, you know, I get it online or I'm going to a museum or even going through old sort of like notes and things of that nature of your own. But how often do you think you're consuming art?
Every hour that I'm not sleeping.
Good answer. Good answer.
Because even when we're watching TV, we're consuming art.
This is true. It's like I'm not new to this. I'm true to this.
Yeah. 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 If I'm awake, I'm consuming art in some way.
It's good. Because sometimes, like, I like asking a version of that question. Sometimes it's the artist's lifestyle, but it's getting across that sort of point that, if you're in it, you're not turning it off. And it's the batten down the hatches, is all of those things. It's like, nah,
Yep. Everything is material.
100%. Now, this one is going to be a little bit of the weird one. I think it's funny. Um, what New Yorkisms do you often say? And in your conversations up there in Harlem, I'm going to say Harlem, like like Ricardo Tubbs, because that's where he was from in Miami Vice. Uh, But what are your Baltimoreisms that come up in conversations when you're in New York? So your New Yorkerisms that you enjoy, but your Baltimoreisms that come up in conversations in New York.
That's hard because I think I actually code switch a lot. Like I when I'm in Baltimore, I'm in Baltimore, right? And when I'm in New York, I'm in New York. I have to think about that. Um,
We do that thing when people like,
well,
yeah,
well, well, I'll say, something that's also very Harlem is how people say the street names here, right? So if you're not from New York and you might think of 125th Street as 125th Street. If you're
mhm.
from Harlem, you're like, oh, I'm going down to Fifth.
Really?
To Fifth. Yeah. Or, the a lot of the boulevards up here have, there's Lenox Avenue, there's Adam Clayton Powell, there's Frederick Douglass, and a lot of Harlemites actually call them by their number, 7th Ave, 8th Ave.
Really?
Yeah. They don't call them by what they've been renamed, renamed after these legends.
Yeah,
No, that's 7th Ave, not Adam Clayton Powell. So you can kind of tell when people are from Harlem,
yeah,
how they talk about how they say the geography.
yeah.
Um, and Baltimore, I mean, I think, you can even hear me now, like Baltimore versus Baltimore, right? It's like,
I
who,
noticed.
yeah, exactly. Um, I think the Baltimore isms really just come out when I'm in conversation with family or when I'm home, in that home. And so I will say that people here call me Southern, and I'm like, I'm not Southern. I was like, my cousins who live in Louisiana and South Carolina, they're Southern,
Hmm?
but I'm from the up South.
But up south.
I'm from the up South.
Like real, like for real, when because one, like I was, sharing with you before we got started, people try to do this thing distinguishing where I'm from. It's like, yo, East Baltimore. That's just where it's at. And they're like, sound like, where's the accent? I've had linguistics professors like, where that accent come from? It's like, Morgan? I don't know what to tell. And
Oh
it's sort of that.
God.
But I think the thing that's really interesting about it, it's definitely an East Coast thing. Because when I go up there to like Philly to do interviews, I've had guys like, "You're from here, right?" I was like, I'm from down bottom, my G. Like, what are you asking? And definitely not a South thing. I love New Orleans. I go a lot. And I go at least once a year for the birthday. My birthday is the beginning of Mardi Gras season. So I'm down out there. And they're like, "Are you from up north?" I was like, why can't I win? Can I win? Just want to enjoy my po' boy in peace, player.
Right, right, right. Yeah.
So this is the last one I got for you. Because you touched on like, consuming media. It was one of the things you lightly touched on a moment ago. So what is your favorite movie about dance? Oh yeah. I want to get who the person is as well.
So I have two, and they're both really cheesy.
Cheesy is good.
Flashdance, Flashdance from the 80s,
Mhm.
and Center Stage. And if you're familiar with Flashdance, it's like, I mean, it's such an iconic film, and it is what I like to call 80s tastic. The leg warmers, the jazz shoes, the choreography is incredible. And then Center Stage is a movie that came out when I was in high school. I think I was a junior in high school. And it was the movie, even though I'm not a ballet dancer and, I was not ever going to be in the School of American Ballet or in New York City Ballet, it was the movie that me and my friends were like, we're going to New York and we're going to dance. And I have to share this tidbit because I was rewatching the movie a few months back, and there's a line where the dance professor, he's like, you're going to be wanting to say you're dancing at sold out houses at Lincoln Center. And my show Purple, it premiered at Lincoln Center last year. And I was like, look at me. I didn't have to be a ballet dancer to have a sold out house at Lincoln Center. Look at me go. So I feel like, that movie kind of set the tone for some dreams that I have realized.
Oh yeah. That's great. I love that. I love that connection. Um, I used to pull my shoulder out to look like I was in Flash Dance. It was fine. I wear a gray hoodie, pour the water on myself. It's all good. I'm a maniac.
Absolutely.
Definitely when it gets to the 80s tastic things. And even when, you encounter things that give you the vibe of like, what does this environment look like? Whether it be, I'm waiting for this generation of like podcast movies. I don't know, it's just an afterthought, but just something that kind of gets it right and something that you can kind of relate to and even in a sort of in way relate back to your like creative friends and creative community. Like, yo, that's yeah. It's just meme dialogue that can present itself.
I do know.
So that's kind of it for the conversation here. So there's two things I'd like to do in these final moments. One, I want to thank you for coming on and spending some time with me and also wearing your glasses, being a part of this conversation. And two, I want to invite and encourage you to share with the listeners where they can follow you, check out your work, and stay up to date with all the goings on. So if you will, the floor is yours.
Absolutely. You can check out my work on my website, slmdances.com. And you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at slmdances. That's our collective, but then you can also follow me personally at Sid Mosley, SYDMOSLEY. Also on Facebook, I know we got some Facebook aunties out here. Okay. So that would be facebook.com/Sydnie L Mosley Dances. And you can stay up to date on all of our work there. I would love to just shout out a couple of things that we have coming up. I'm actually going to be performing on Monday, July 29th as a part of the Dance Magazine 25 to Watch Live concert. Our Spotlight and Purple film series is going to be featured in the 2024 Black Girls Rock Film Festival, which dates TBD. It got rescheduled because of the presidential debate in Atlanta, but that will be happening in the near future. And I am going to be touring Purple to the Center for Performing Arts at Penn State in February 2025. So if you are in central Pennsylvania or the Midwest area, there is another opportunity for you to experience our work, Purple.
It's great. It's great, 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 great stuff coming. Busy, busy, busy coming up for you very soon.
Indeed. I'm going to be with you doing the teaching this fall. I'm also going to be a visiting professor at Harvard this fall, teaching community engaged dance making. So I am, calendar is full over the next several months.
And there you have it, folks. I want to again thank Sydnie L. Mosley for coming onto the podcast and sharing a bit of her journey with us. And for Sydnie, I am Rob Lee, saying that there's art, culture, and community in and around your neck of the woods. You've just got to look for it.